disappointing to note that the CEO of Australia Post, former CEO of Australia Post, Christine Holgate, has taken up a new role rather than pursuing a return to work in Australia Post. I'll explain more about why it's disappointing in a minute. In denying Ms Holgate, quote, her legal principles of procedural fairness and natural justice, can Australia Post employees, licensees and customers expect the same treatment as she got?
Senator, I'd prefer not to comment on matters dealing with the board and that have been very well dealt with the inquiry and the 255-page reading that we've received yesterday. But I think those matters should be kept entirely separate from the matters that happen on a day-to-day basis at Australia Post. I think they're very different matters. So
I can imagine
those matters have been well covered by.
I can imagine you advocating that, but the description of your board chairman's behaviour in giving evidence to both Senate estimates and committee's subsequent inquiry has shown him to, at best, have an appalling memory and, at worst, have been deliberately evasive and misleading. I'll just relate a personal example, personal interactions with the LPOs, because this issue about what happened to Christine Holgate goes well beyond Ms Holgate. It goes to Australia Post. The ministers have done enormous damage, I believe, to Australia Post and to the LPOs. Now, I've been pursuing issues for the LPOs strongly and vigorously. We've gone out into the regions and we've listened to people in the city LPOs, and they have told us for years that their needs have not been met, they've not been listened to, they've been abused, they've been trodden. So prior to Ms Holgate becoming the CEO, that's the way the LPOs were treated. And what stunned me was the LPOs just swung straight in behind Ms Holgate, very, very strongly behind her. And they said that she actually told me later that due to my questions in Senate estimates, she said there's a problem here. And she went out and listened. And the LPOs were very, very grateful for that. And they swung in right behind her. Angela Cramp from the LPOs, very strong advocate. The LPOs were writing letters to us saying how much they appreciated Ms Holgate. They've never had that kind of support, and now they've lost it. And the way she's been dismissed has left a lot of people wondering what's going on in Australia Post. That's why it's so important.
Senator, if I could try and separate those issues and matters that have been dealt with well by the inquiry in the former CEO. But I could give you my, having grown up on a farm myself and coming from regional Western Australia and joining Australia Post because of its far reach into regional and rural Australia, I appreciate, as does Ms Sheffield, who looks after community and consumers and all of the LPOs, how important the LPOs are to Australia Post. We are absolutely committed to the LPOs, and as Ms Sheffield said, the first round of payment reform was, what, 55 million increase in additional payments. So there is a significant amount of support within Australia Post here at this desk today and back in the offices right across Australia Post. So we do appreciate everything the LPOs do. They're a very important part of Australia Post. They will be for a long time to come, I hope.
Well, we'll be assessing it by listening to the LPOs as to what happens. Absolutely. Because they're Australia Post in many communities, and they're the heart of many communities. So,
Senator, and just to take that on board, I sat down with the chair of the Australia Post Advisory APLAC. I always get that acronym wrong. Outside his LPO and discussed matters, and we are listening to LPOs every day. So,
well, I've just had a text message from Angela Cramp. And she's saying he has had no contact with LPOs since he took over the role. He has not responded to anyone.
From Ms Cramp to
me.
Directed at me?
Yes.
I haven't had direct contact with Ms Cramp. as I said, I sat down with the chairman of APLAC, and I'm out in post offices and corporate and LPOs alike. So as Ms Sheffield, on a regular basis.
We hope it doesn't go back to the way it was pre-Holgate.
No, can I also add to that, Senator? We have worked very hard to build those relationships with licensees. We understand and value licensees incredibly. This week we had an APLAC board where we brought everyone together, which Angela Cramp is a national director on. We've just finished 6 weeks of road shows where all licensees were invited to their communities, and we will be coming, hopefully, COVID permitting, in Wollongong next week to ensure that we hear from our licensees, because we agree with you. We have to listen. There is a lot of change happening in our community. There's a lot of change to their business, and there's a lot of change that needs to be there to support them. And whether it's in looking at what products they're offering, outlets, payments, lots of consultation, and we really do value the input that they have in both associations. Both LPOG and POAL provide a lot of input and provide it not just to myself but to teams of people at Australia Post that really are there to do the best. And we don't want anything to go back. It won't go back. This payment reform is written. It's an agreement. It is there to stay, and the next phase will be an agreement. So really, it is there to really support them and help them to grow, because we know when LPOs thrive, Australia Post thrives, and that's why we've created the payment reform, so that it's not a cost. It's actually a cost to sale. It's based on growth. So as e-commerce grows, they grow because they get a greater share of parcel revenue, which they never got before. So the whole basis of how that's set up actually is there to drive their growth and ensure that their businesses grow.
Right, and as you said, it didn't happen before. Thanks to Ms Holgate, it has happened.
Yes,
so we'll be watching very, very closely, because we don't want to see it go back to the previous days. Will you be implementing Senator Pauline Hanson's recommendations as part of the committee's recommendation and report that came down yesterday, that the Australia Post chair, Mr Lucio Di Bartolomeo, be removed from the board, given the scathing conclusions and comments about his behaviour?
Senator, thank you very much for that question. I don't think it's the responsibility of the acting group chief executive to comment on the chair. The chair has put a statement out yesterday afternoon saying he's committed to continuing to lead Australia Post. So, but it's not for the acting management and as acting CEO to comment on that.
I have other questions on services, so I'll put them on notice.
That'd be great.
Thank you very much.